We're doing a video series. We're in the middle of a video series called Getting to Know You. And the purpose of the series is just to introduce all of the BridgePoint staff members and leadership, just so you have an idea of who we are and what we do. And today's participant or victim, depending on how you look at it, is Brian McTurnal. And so Brian, just tell us a little bit about who you are and specifically what you do at BridgePoint.
Like you said, I'm Brian McTurnal. I work here at BridgePoint. I am the dive director and administrator, so I hang out with the youth kids. Also do a little bit of work with administrative stuff as far as different ministries of the church, day-to-day stuff. That's about it.
Let's talk about going back to the beginning as far as things that brought you into ministry, which before any of that, there's the coming to know Jesus. So tell us about how you came to know Jesus in the first place.
It's actually pretty interesting. When I was 10 years old, in this building actually, there was a VBS fair, and the pastor, Mike Adams, stood up and gave a little sermon, and I felt like, he was speaking directly to me. So that day I accepted Jesus and got baptized in this building actually, so it's pretty neat being back here. So that was 10 years ago, so that was 25 years ago.
So following that trajectory, I guess really what brought you to BridgePoint in the first place? Because you were at BridgePoint as just a member of the church before you were on staff or any official capacity.
We went to BridgePoint because we heard that it was a little different. We'd been in your traditional church, you dress up, you wear a tie, whatever. And we just wanted to try something different. They were actually meeting at a movie theater when we first started going, which was definitely different. We tried it out the first time, and a lot of people hugging you as you're walking in the door, very welcoming, and we've been here ever since. It was awesome.
And you're a hugger, so that was important for you.
I love hugs.
Okay.
Free hugs for everybody.
Yeah, take note of that. If you ever see Brian, give him a big hug.
Yeah.
He loves those.
As far as getting into the ministry at BridgePoint, that really wasn't something that I thought I would ever do. I always wanted to be a hand model.
Don't we all?
But I can't reach these fingers together, so, you gotta have backup plans.
So beyond that, you were a volunteer at BridgePoint for a long time, and really a high capacity volunteer. You led ministries, you led our first parking team, right? Yeah. So you kind of, I don't want to say worked your way up, but you were on different levels in the leadership of the church. Within the last year or two has really been the time that you've risen to leadership. Talk about that process, what that's been like for you.
Yeah, I've always wanted to do stuff in the church. When Amy and I first came to BridgePoint, we had kind of had, an experience that we were like, well, let's not get too far in right away, let's just see what happens. And then like 2 weeks later, we're both serving. So, it doesn't really work out that way. But let's see, we did parking, setting up chairs at the Moose Lodge, and then just slowly, got more and more involved. And then there was a need for somebody to do youth work, and the kids weren't, being able to meet as regularly as possible. So I felt like God was calling me to do that. And when there's opportunity and a calling, that's, where success is.
What's something that most people probably don't know about you?
I should have said.
Or maybe people who aren't close to you, just the average person who just is acquainted with you, something they wouldn't know.
Auburn fan for football. I married into that. Redskins fan my whole life. I pretty much love every sport. I'm very competitive. That's what helps me get along with these dive kids, because they're also very competitive.
Talk about dive. I think it's one of those things that we as a church could be more informed about. What's something that maybe we don't know about dive?
I think that we love on the kids. We tell them that they have, someone that they can go to, an adult that is not always an authority figure, but can also be a friend and, lend advice to teenagers. Now, some of us, been teenagers a long, long time ago, but we were still teenagers, like Kevin, for instance.
Some of us still are teenagers now.
That's true. So. And we like to, tell things that are relatable to their lives. So how do we relate, Moses' struggles or the things that Jesus went through? Because all the time we hear, well, Jesus was perfect, so he didn't have to, deal with that. But showing them that Jesus had adversity and stuff too, and how he pressed through those things is important.
Do you have any stories as far as times where it really was impressed upon you how rewarding that it is as far as working with the kids, working with the youth?
I think that my first few weeks working with the youth was probably the hardest because the kids didn't know me. They'd kind of gone through a tough situation, so they're not sure that they want to trust an adult. Who is this guy trying to take over? But I think, one of the first, maybe a month into it, the kids, I don't know if it was the lesson that we had or just that we connected during the time that we had a game. But it's just a turn of, hey, this guy is going to stay with us. He's not just another adult that's going to leave us in a couple weeks. And I feel like that was really important. And then to get some of those key, because even though they're students, they're still students that lead and, others look up to, and being able to earn their trust and respect was huge, because then they can show the others, that it makes it an easier transition.
What is one thing or multiple things that are misnomers or just kind of a false understanding, false perception of youth ministry?
Probably that all we do is have fun. Which fun is the big part. I mean, kids go to school all day. Do they really want to come and, learn extra, So you got to throw some fun in there to kind of help. But the kids either come just to have fun, or they're not really learning anything. We take Bible lessons and we use them to teach about respect, bullying, all different types of things that are in their everyday environment, and I think that's important. So maybe we're not getting super deep into Revelation, but we are talking about daily things that, could happen in their everyday lives. And that kids, they understand. They're not, just because they're young, you don't look down on them, because they do understand. And, people are like, oh, I wish I had teenager problems. But to them, those are the biggest problems that they've ever had. So I feel like a lot of times, even I do it sometimes, I'm like, oh, schoolwork, so hard, But for them, it is a huge deal.
That's good. What would you say to somebody who has been contemplating volunteering for Dive? They've been kicking it around, but they're kind of on the fence about it.
So it seems kind of scary, but they're super cool kids. It's very rewarding, and they're genuine, which is nice. A lot of adults have their guard up, whatever. Not these kids. If they think something, they're going to say it. And it's very rewarding, and you're making an impact on, the future leaders of this world and the church, which is pretty cool. So I think you should do it.
And last question, I think a really important takeaway for our church is to know what you're going through and how we can pray for you. So specifically, how can our church be praying for you?
I think that the church could be praying for me as the dive leader, that I am the best that I can be. Sometimes it's easy to, look over a lesson and prepare for it, but maybe not as well as you want to because you've got other things on your plate. But to make it a priority and make sure that it's the best that it can be. I also think that this year being my second year in dive, that I'd like to be more active with the kids' friends as far as going to the schools and things, trying to get more people to come. And so that would be a huge prayer request for me, because one, I'd be able to get into the school, and then two, having the courage to be hanging out with all these kids and their friends, trying to get them to come to our church, or any church.
Well, thanks for being with us,
Hey, no
Brian.
problem.
Appreciate it. And now you guys know a little bit more about Brian, hopefully more than you did before. You know more about the Dive student ministry than you did before, and you know how you can be praying for both Brian and the Dive student ministry. So thanks for watching.